chief evangelist of a Sydney-based company called Canva. Canva, yes, yes. Well, what can I say? You need to fire your aide. Okay, I believe you. And my name is Kawasaki. It's not okay. I have to tell you, can I tell you a funny story? Though lots of times, people come up to me and they say, "Guy, you know, your book changed my life." And I'm thinking, "Oh, this is great." And they say, "Yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was the best book." So not only do we all look alike, we also sound alike. So I'll give you a little bit more of my background. I worked for Apple twice as Apple's software evangelist in the Macintosh division. Probably the largest collection of egomaniacs in the history of California. And that's saying a lot because there are a lot of egomaniacs in California. The second time I was Apple's chief evangelist, I started some software companies. Are you pulling me off already? I know, that was interfering with my speech. Thank you. Thank you. So I started several software companies. I became a writer and a speaker. I returned to Apple as Apple's chief evangelist in 1995. That was so long ago, Apple was supposed to die back then. So it's gone a long way from supposedly dying to the most valuable, profitable company in the world. And along the way, I started software companies. I wrote 13 books. And I advised Motorola, as you heard. About a month ago, I joined the board of trustees of the Wikimedia Foundation, which is the thing that manages Wikipedia. But my real claim to fame in Australia is that I'm the chief evangelist of Canva, which is a company in Surrey Hills. And I've just had a wonderful time. I've been to Sydney several times, and I can honestly tell you that I have never met an Australian I didn't like. I cannot say that about, really, any other country, maybe. Certainly not about America. So I have had a wonderful time here, and when I die, you can write this down. When I die, and I'm cremated, I want half of my ashes spread at Balmoral Beach, because I just think that is just the most fantastic place. I don't know if the people at Bathurst Pavilion would want my ashes, but maybe. Where's our Lord Mayor? Maybe our Lord Mayor can work that out. By the way, Lord Mayor, what a great title. I thought Chief Evangelist was a cool title, but Lord Mayor, it's hard to beat that title. I suppose that, you know, I have seen many, many tech speakers. And I'll tell you, tech speakers in America anyway, they have two salient features. The first is that most American tech speakers suck. And the second quality is that they go long. That's a deadly combination. You know, if you suck and you're short, it's okay. And if you're great and you're long, it's okay. But if you suck and go long, it's like being stupid and arrogant. And it's just a bad combination. And so what I do is I use the top 10 format for my speeches. That way, in case you think I suck, you know approximately how long I'll suck. 10 key points. And so I'm going to talk to you about the lessons that I learned from Steve Jobs. I worked for Steve Jobs arguably twice. And he was just a fantastic person, a very difficult person to work for, very mercurial, very demanding. All the great HR practices that you've all learned about meeting with your employees and developing goals and helping people reach their goals. Steve did none of that. Actually, I lived in complete and utter fear of Steve because he would not hesitate to tell people in front of the whole division what a bozo, clueless person you were. And I just lived in terrible fear of that. So, having said that, I would not trade working for Steve Jobs with anything in my past. Steve Jobs was a fantastic person. Everybody always comes around to ask me, okay, what's your favorite Steve Jobs story? And my favorite Steve Jobs story is that one day I'm in my cubicle, I'm working away, and he comes up to me with another person that I'd never met, and he asked me, Guy, what do you think of this company called Noware, K-N-O-W-A-R-E? Stands for Knowledge Software, an educational software company. And I said, well, Steve, it's kind of an MS-DOS company, mediocre, doesn't use graphics very well, doesn't use color very well, doesn't use animation, doesn't use the mouse, drill and practice, boring educational software, kind of a mediocre company. And then he says, well, Guy, I want to introduce you to the CEO. So just FYI, that's what it was like working for Steve. And you know, come to find out, I passed the IQ test. I mean, because if I had said that was a great company, I would have lost. So that's my favorite Steve Jobs story. So now, I want to tell you about the lessons that I learned working for Steve Jobs. And there are 10, and I'm going to go through them. But I just want you to know that right now, obviously, Steve died a few years ago, but I can promise you that right now, he is telling God what to do. So watch out for Universe 2.0 because it's coming. So the first thing I learned from Steve is that, you know what? If you're an innovator, if you're a revolutionary, if you want to build a great tech company, you need to learn to ignore naysayers. The clueless people, the people who are pessimistic, who tell you it can't be done, it shouldn't be done, it isn't necessary. Many, many people told Apple that when we were creating Macintosh. Many, many people told Apple that when they opened the Apple stores. Many people told that about the phone and the pad and the tablet, everything. You need to ignore the naysayers. And I think naysayers, it's a form of bozosity. Bozosity is when you're clueless, you're a clown. And I think the bozosity is much like the flu. And how do we fight the flu? You fight the flu by getting a little bit of flu so that when your body encounters big flu, you've already built up the resistance. And bozosity and naysaying is the same thing. So I'm going to expose you to a little bit of bozosity so that when you encounter big bozosity, you will have already built up the antigens to resist it. This is an example of bozosity. This telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us. Western Union Internal Memo, 1876. In 1876, Western Union wrote off telephony. Oops. You know, Western Union today should be Bitcoin, it should be PayPal, it should be Square maybe, but it's not, because it's very hard to go from telegraph to internet if you write off telephone in the middle. You know what I'm saying? It's just too big a chasm to cross. Maybe the strategic direction for Western Union in 1876 was, let's teach Americans the Morse code. How hard could that be? Then we could put a telegraph in every house. Another example of bozosity, there's no reason why anyone would want a computer in their home. A very famous, very successful, very innovative entrepreneur named Ken Olsen said this. He was the founder of DEC. So imagine if you're Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak and you ran into Ken Olsen at CeBit and you said, Mr. Olsen, we have an idea, we have a new vision for computers. Computers are smaller, cheaper, easier to use. So small, so cheap, so easy to use, Mr. Olsen. You could have a computer in your house. And Mr. Olsen dissed you and said, you know, Steve, Woz, there's no reason why anybody would want a computer in their house. And you didn't start Apple. You need to resist the naysayers and the bozos. Second lesson that I learned from Steve is that customers really cannot tell you what they need. Customers in the mid-'80s told Apple, we want a bigger, faster, cheaper version of this. We want a bigger, faster, cheaper Apple II. Macintosh was not a bigger, faster, cheaper Apple II. It was unrelated to Apple II. Could not run the software. Didn't share the same chipset. It's completely different. We built this instead. And if we had listened to customers, Apple Computer would have simply built a better Apple II. Bigger, faster, cheaper. And I believe Apple would have died. Great innovation occurs when you don't listen to your customers. When you use your passion and your vision and your insight and you create what you believe they will need or they will come to need or that you can convince them they need, which is what Steve did. It is all about anticipating. The next thing I learned from Steve is that truly great innovation happens on the next curve, not on the curve you're on. You know, if you're a typewriter business, it's not making better typewriters, right? If you are a letter quality printer company, it's not about adding more typefaces. If you go letter quality printer, then the next curve is laser printer, then the next curve is 3D printer. It's about getting to the next curve. Very analog example. Ice 1.0. There used to be an ice harvesting industry in America. During the winter months, people would go to frozen lakes and ponds with saws and horses and sleighs and cut blocks of ice. In 1900, 9 million pounds of ice was harvested. Fast forward 30 years, and we have Ice 2.0, the ice factory. Now you froze water, any city, major technological breakthrough, because now It did not have to be a cold city. It did not have to be winter. You could make ice any time of year. Think of the advantage. You could have an ice factory in Sydney. You could not harvest ice in Sydney. The factory curve. 30 years more go by, and now we have the refrigerator curve. This is ice 3.0. And now everybody has a personal ice factory. They have, if you will, a PC, a personal chiller. The very interesting fact is that none of the ice harvesters became ice factories, and none of the ice factories became refrigerator companies, because most companies start on a curve and die on the same curve. It's because they define their business as what they currently do. If you define your business as we harvest ice, then you continue to harvest ice until the ice factory kills you. If you define your business as freezing water centrally and having the Iceman deliver ice, then the refrigerator curve will kill you. This is why none of us use Remington Rand computers today. None of us use Smith Corona computers today. Most companies define themselves in terms of what they already do. You should define yourself in terms of the benefit you provide your customers. So an ice harvester, an ice factory, and a refrigerator company all provide the same thing: cleanliness and convenience. So if you were an ice harvester, you should jump to the next curve of ice factory. And if you're an ice factory, you should jump to the next curve of refrigerator. The key is to get to the next curve. The fourth thing that I learned is that design truly counts. Apple Computer is successful because of great design. This is a picture of a MacBook Air. This is a thing of beauty. How many of you use Macintoshes in this room? Yeah, it's good country. Yeah. This thing, it's cool, it's thin, it's beautiful, it's made of aluminum. It looks like it came from a solid block of aluminum that Tibetan monks carved one day, right? This is a work of art. Design counts. And you saw in your mayor's pictures, slides, which are very nice pictures, I must say. You saw all the pictures of the startups, right, with millennials. I mean, people with facial hair, skinny jeans, bike backs, and you know, tortoiseshell glasses. You saw all the pictures, right? And in any of those pictures, did you see any of the millennials, any of the hip, young, cool people using a big, thick, black, ugly laptop? No, not at all. The only place you can find pictures of millennials and cool people and innovative people, revolutionary people using thick, black, ugly laptops is stock photography. Stock photography. I had to search high and low for this picture. Stock photography. You think those people are voluntarily taking that picture? There's no way. Next topic. Democratization is a good thing. When all the dust settles, Apple is in the business of democratizing technology. That's what Apple stands for. At a time when, if you wanted to use a personal computer, you had to drive to a university, drive to a large company, drive to the government. You have to work for the government, large company, bank, something like that to use a computer. Apple changed all that with the Apple I and the Apple II and the Macintosh. Democratization is a great thing. That's what Apple stands for. When IBM joined the computer business, the personal computer business, Apple welcomed it, democratizing it. When Apple announced the Macintosh, it created this ad where this woman ran down a session like this. Of course, you're not the skinheads in the audience. She ran down this session. She swung around, threw an axe at this icon of a George Orwellian 1984 totalitarian figure, and she burst that. This is the screen capture from 1984. Although, if you're a very astute person, you'll notice that she has an iPod on her waist, and that could not possibly be true in 1984. So this is another example of the democratization. And I have to tell you that working for Steve basically set my life in terms of wanting to help democratize stuff. So with Apple, I helped democratize computers. And now I'm on the board of Wikimedia, and it democratizes information. And this company, Canva, that I work for, we're democratizing design. And this has been my life calling. I like to democratize things. I like to make power I like to make functionality available to everybody. I like to make entrepreneurship a meritocracy, where it's not who you know, it's not who you went to school with, it's not who your parents know, it's not what country club you belong to. It's because of the competence, the quality, and the innovation. Democratization is a good thing. Next thing I learned is that less is more. Specifically, Steve applied this in terms of presentations. Let me show you a Steve Jobs slide. This is a Steve Jobs slide. Notice the size of the graphic. The size of the text behind it. iTunes is in about a 200-point font. The best Windows app ever written is about a 90-point font. So this slide has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words. 7 words. Okay? Big graphic, big font. That's the key to Steve Jobs. Let me show you a contrasting slide. Okay? Just remember this slide. 7 words, 200-point font, 90-point font, 1 graphic. Okay? So imagine you saw a presentation by Steve Jobs. The next session at CeBit is Bill Gates. This is the difference. I don't even know where to begin with this slide. Like, what is he trying to communicate? I learned this very valuable lesson. In design, in presentations, just about everywhere you communicate, less is more. Steve believed that less is more. For those entrepreneurs out there, there's what I call the 10-20-30 rule of PowerPoint or Keynote or Canva, because we also create presentations. 10-20-30 rule is that the optimal number of slides in your PowerPoint presentation is 10. 10, okay? You'd be lucky to get 10 points across in a meeting. 10 slides. Now, of course, you know, you're not counting, but you can see that number. I'm at number 22 already, right? So you're one guy, such an American hypocrite. You're telling us to use 10 slides and you're number 22 and you're not finished yet, right? So what's up with that? Let me explain. You are not me, okay? 10 slides. You should be able to give those 10 slides in 20 minutes. Yes, you have a 60-minute meeting, but let's just say with other laptops, it might take 40 minutes for the projector to work. And then the optimal size font, I really think it's 30 points. 30 points. Figure out who the oldest person is in the audience, divide his or her age by 2. Pitching to 60-year-old people, 30 points. 50-year-old people, 25 points. Someday, God bless you, God help you, you may be pitching to a 16-year-old. That day, use the 8-point font. Okay? But until that day, 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30-point font. Number 7. Number 7, very, very counterintuitive. And you would think of all people in the world, Steve Jobs would not prove this, but absolutely he proved this. And many CEOs believe that changing their minds is a sign of stupidity, it's a sign of weakness, it's a sign of cowardice. Steve Jobs taught me quite the opposite. Changing your mind is a sign of intelligence and courage. Let me illustrate this. This is from a Steve Jobs speech, June 11th, 2007, in which he introduced the iPhone. Okay? He said, our innovative approach using Web 2.0 based standards lets developers create amazing new applications while keeping the iPhone secure and reliable. This is June 2007. Let me translate what he's saying. He's saying, no standalone apps. If you want to create an app for iPhone, it has to be a Safari plugin. June 11, 2007. About a year goes by, press release from Apple. Apple executives to showcase Mac OS X Leopard and OS X iPhone development platforms at the Worldwide Developers Conference 2008 keynote. So a year later, let me translate this. He's saying, we're opening up iPhone. Now you can create standalone apps. Completely reversing himself. That was part of the genius of Steve Jobs. When he found out he was wrong, he did not hesitate to change his mind and change the course of Apple. It takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of intellectual power, but he did it. Now I have to tell you, side story here, the first time when he said no apps, all the experts said, thank you, Steve, you're making our phones more secure and reliable, right? It's a good thing. Once again, Steve Jobs is leading the industry, making a phone a closed, safe architectural system. 12 months later, he opens it up completely, and the same press say, Steve Jobs, such a genius, he's created an open architecture. That was part of the beauty of Steve Jobs. He could always convince you he was right. But the message is, great innovators change their minds. Number eight is a lesson that I learned from Steve, that value is not the same thing as price. Price is in terms of dollars. Value is the total impact of a computer, total impact of software. It's not just the purchase price, it's support, it's service, it's virus checking, it's training, it's all the good stuff. And I dug through the archives and I found this ad that I think truly personifies, the difference between value and price. And I'm preparing you right now in advance. This is an ad that's 30 years old. I screen captured it, so if you're waiting for 4K HD TV 1080, you're gonna be disappointed. All right, but this is one of my favorite ads from my days at Apple.
Computer, and to use it, all you have to do is learn this. This is Macintosh from Apple, also a highly sophisticated office computer. And to use it, all you have to do is learn this. Now you decide which one is more sophisticated. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us.
The key is that price and value are different. Nobody ever bought anything from Apple because it was the lowest price, right? Apple sells connectors for $30 that it costs 50 cents to make. And we're thanking them for that privilege of buying that connector at $30. Price is not the same thing as value. Number 9 is that A players hire A+ players. If you're an entrepreneur, this could be the most important lesson I leave you with, which is, if you're in charge of engineering, so you started the company, you're CEO, engineering background, your job is to hire a finance person that's better than you, a marketing person that's better than you, a salesperson that's better than you. Everybody you hire should be better than you, including, eventually, your VP of engineering and your CTO. Right? You want to be the second best person of all your direct reports, because if you have a team like that, they will carry forth the battle for you. A players hire A+ players. By contrast, B players hire C players. C players hire D players. D players hire E players. If you start hiring B players, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to be surrounded by Z players. This is what we call in Silicon Valley the bozo explosion. We need to fight the bozo explosion. This is the Macintosh division, about 1984. I'm in the far left upper corner, way back there. Had I known that Apple would be so successful, I would have stood in the front of this picture, because now nobody can see me back there. Last night we took a company photo of all the employees at Canva, and I got right in the front. If a photo like that is going to be used 30 years from now, I was like, wow, Guy Kawasaki is right there. So, that was the greatest collection of people I've ever worked with. And you know what? I learned something there too. A lot of people did not have the correct pedigree. They did not have the PhD in computer science. They didn't have all that kind of stuff. They didn't have, years of working for DEC or Digital or HP. Fundamentally, this group of people were people who loved Macintosh. And as an entrepreneur, may I give you a piece of advice? That of course you should check people's educational background. You should also check their work experience. But one more thing that you should check, and many entrepreneurs don't do this, is do they get it and do they love what you do? And I could make the case that that is more important than education and work experience. In my own particular case, when the Macintosh division hired me, I had just come from the jewelry business. My job was literally selling gold jewelry around the country. Nothing to do with technology. Hardware, arguably, but nothing to do with technology. I had a psych degree from Stanford. The reason why I had a psych degree is because at Stanford at that time, that was the easiest degree possible. Right? So here's Guy, psych degree, jewelry schlepper. Sounds like the ideal person to convince people to write Mac software. On paper, I was the worst possible person. But you know what? I love Macintosh. When I saw Macintosh for the first time, I thought that the angels were singing. I thought the clouds had parted. It was a religious experience for me. And that religious belief in Macintosh is what enabled me to be so successful. A players hire A+ players. The 10th thing is all the marketing you really need to know. If you understand this graph, you've nailed marketing. You don't have to get an MBA, you don't have to do all that kind of stuff, just personify this graph. Vertical axis is uniqueness, horizontal axis is value. If you've ever dealt with McKinsey, this is a 2x2 matrix. McKinsey will charge you $5 million to tell you you need to be in the upper right-hand corner. Okay? I'm telling you that for free right now. Okay. In the bottom left corner, excuse me, in the bottom right corner. In the bottom right corner, that's where you could create something valuable, but it is not unique. In that corner, you've done something important, but if you slap the same operating system on the same hardware, you have to compete on price. And you know, you can make a lot of money here. Lenovo did it, Dell did it, lots of people did it, but it's always about price. Because fundamentally, you're selling the same thing. In the upper left-hand corner, that's where you've created something truly unique. Only you do this thing, but it is of no value. In that corner, you are just plain stupid. Right? In the bottom left corner is the .com corner. The .com corner is the worst of all because you've created something that's not valuable and it is not unique. Right? So this is where pets.com was. This is a way that you could buy dead cows in cans and have it delivered to your house. Supply chain management, right? And yet, it wasn't very convenient because now you had to be at home when the dead cow in the can was delivered to your house. And you may have reduced the retail margin, but you had to add back shipping and handling. So it wasn't very convenient, it wasn't very valuable. But then people like me in Silicon Valley, who were investors at the time, we did this wild calculation that goes like this. There are 300 million Americans, 1 in 4 owns a dog, 75 million dogs. Each dog eats 2 cans of dog food per day, 150 million cans of dog food per day, right? And dogs eat food every day. It's not like B2B, this is B2C, or more accurately, B2D. Dogs eat every day. So you take a conservative estimate of 1% of 150 million cans of dog food per day, is 1.5 million cans of dog food per day, multiplied by 365, and you get a $500 million business, or 500 million can business. Make a buck each, $500 million per year. Worst case, conservatively speaking, how hard could it be to get 1%? So many of us fell for that reason. That's why there was pets.com, epets.com, lastminutepets.com, discountpets.com, australianpets.com. There's 16 ways to buy dog food, just as much money, less convenient. The .com corner, the corner you want to be in, the holy grail of marketing. The most important message about marketing you could remember is that you want to be in the upper right-hand corner. That you have a product or service that is unique and valuable. That's where Apple made money, made margin, made history. If you want to create fantastic online graphics, fast, free, and easy, Canva is in that upper left-hand corner. If you're an engineer, you need to create a product or service that is in the upper left-hand corner, unique and valuable. And if you are a marketer, you have to convince the world that you have something that is unique and valuable. Other examples of unique and valuable. Breitling. Breitling makes a watch called the Emergency. And if you unscrew the big knob at the 5 o'clock position, pull it out, there's an antenna. That antenna starts broadcasting an emergency signal. That emergency signal is caught by airplanes. So when you pull that out, pretty soon, you know, your Coast Guard, your Army, your Navy is looking for you. All right? That watch can save your life. It's the only watch that I know that can save your life. So if you're a sailor or a hiker or a skier, and you might go off course, you might be alone and dying, that watch can save your life. Valuable and unique. Upper right-hand corner. And my final slide is a bonus to all of you, is the final lesson that I learned from Steve Jobs, which is when it comes to innovation and revolution and entrepreneurship, many people have the attitude that, well, when I can see it, I'll believe it. But if you truly want to be innovative, it's quite the opposite. Your attitude has to be, believe it, I will see it. It's because Apple was able to convince people to believe in Macintosh Believe in the new operating system. Believe in the new operating system that had zero software, zero install base. We convinced people to believe in it. That's why they saw it. And when you come over tech company and tech company and tech company, you'll notice that the great tech companies, they succeeded because people believed in it so much that they tried it, that they went to work for it, that they created something beautiful, and then people came and used it. So my last piece of advice for you is, some things need to be believed to be seen. And that are the top 10 lessons of Steve Jobs. And again, I love your city, I love your country. I'll be at Bathurst Pavilion, Balmoral Bay, having breakfast Thursday morning if you want to join me. And I hope to come back soon. I love this place. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.